Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Commander Runningcloud's log. Um, you know, I love God. I love God so much. I know you can tell by all of these religious relics, the Padre Pio cross and the evil eye, and the organite against the technological invasions and the prayer beads. And I have a crucifix around in my handbag. So I know you know that God is really the center of my life in so many ways. Today at church, I had such a good time. Oh my goodness. I'm pretty sure that the angels came to my church this morning. I'm pretty sure the angels were singing and weeping in my church this morning because our pastor over at Fame really brought the Spirit of God down into the room to be with us. A lot of people, especially non-Europeans, are feeling some kind of way about the presidential election. It's almost as if people actually thought that if the other side had won, that our needs would be met and our expectations would be met. And we pretty much know that it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be that way. I mean, I think that Vice President Harris did a super good job of addressing the angst and pain that people were thinking when she started campaigning recently. But we can't forget how many hearts she broke with her aggressive cooperation with the enemies of America to genocide Black American families using prison and the private prison system. And we can't really forget that. We also can't forget her enduring silence. Now, it could be loyalty. We don't really know, what it was, but we do know that Kamala had an enduring silence. Her silence was not broken as she watched Arabs being murdered by Jews, and while she watched American Jews preach anti-American beliefs that they have the right to murder people and steal their property. That's anti-American. But we really screwed up, people. We really screwed up when we did not pay attention to the fact that the World War II refugees had to be suffering from a very extreme form of complex post-traumatic stress disorder from what they had been through. I mean, I was only in the concentration camp in Houston for 18 months. Of course, living in Phoenix, Arizona was a trial in itself, horrible trial in itself. Oh my God, I'm still trying to deal with that. I'm still trying to deal with the way the housing industry there made sure I would never have a home again, and how corrupt it was, and how the whole thing is designed to work the way it works. You think it's your fault that you fell out of the bottom of the system. They make you think it was your fault. You didn't do what you were supposed to do, so you fell out of the bottom. You have no one to blame but yourself. It's the same kind of lie as the lie we hear in the spiritual communities that say, well, you asked to come here and you planned your life. So if you're suffering, it's because you planned to suffer. Honey, I did not plan to suffer. I planned to come here and triumph. That's why I kept working so hard. That's why I never gave up. That's why when they bombed me, when the European enemies and the Jews bombed me out of one economic path to success and prosperity, I just jumped on another one and rode the train until they derailed it again and again and again and again, until at the end, in my 68 years, I don't have the financial history to have a decent place to live. Now, don't get me wrong. I like living in hotels. I've come to like living in hotels because I don't want to be a sitting duck where I'm sitting in an apartment and all the people in the property management office are feeling superior to me as they jack my rent up. Now, in order to get an apartment, you pretty much have to tell them your life history for their files, for their nosy businesses. So they know when you're going to be over water. They know when you're going to be over the recommended rate of 25% of your income. Now, not one single real estate association has made sure that rents stayed within 25% of the median wage being paid to the American public. No one did. They acted as if they had no reason to associate with that. And our antitrust department, that's supposed to be protecting us from monopolies and price fixing and other kinds of market manipulations that deprive people and cheat people and deceive people. Well, they totally dropped the gun, didn't they? I mean, we can just look at Elon Musk and see how they totally dropped the basket. How can you be living on government entitlements? Your corporations are living on government entitlements, and then you privately buy one of the most successful rapid delivery global messaging systems on the planet. And then you commit a far worse crime than the crime you accuse the people of performing before you took it over. I don't know. So when people say, oh wow, well Trump and Musk are like this now, right? Because Trump loves money and Elon Musk loves giving money away to people that he wants to promote him. So we got a lot of people feeling a certain kind of way, whether it is that they know that Elon Musk is a Wernher von Braun look-alike, continuing the Wernher von Braun take over the world with nuclear violence and charm everyone into believing that you're a good guy. And we know that Elon and Werner are pretty much the same person. I mean, they even are about the same height. And we all know that Wernher von Braun was more than likely an ET, because why else would President Kennedy single him out for a ride in the convertible? Why else would President Kennedy give him a private audience with the CEO of the United States of America Corporation? Why else would Operation Paperclip have brought Werner and all of his boys to live the good life in my country and plan ways to kill me and my people? You see, so I'm pretty sure that Werner was an ET, and I'm pretty sure that Elon Musk is a brand, that he's a figurehead, an icon, a paper puppet that stands for an entire group of people that are imperialists and European supremacists and overall bad guys who speak out of both sides of their mouths. So a lot of people are feeling some kind of way about the election. A lot of people are feeling a sense of fear and terror and hopelessness and desperation that their last chance to save America is gone. What do I mean, save America? Everyone in America wants to be able to pursue happiness. When the Europeans came and wrote down their feelings about America and how they wanted to behave in America, they did it by deriving it from the atmosphere that was here. They said, our home is different from the home of the Americans. And the Americans have some je ne sais quoi, some unmentionable, some unnameable quality in their lives that is giving them an inner joy. And we want some of that. We want to be able to pursue the inner joy that the Americans feel. And they put that in their papers of incorporation, their treaty with Europe, saying, okay, we're going to be a colony here. We're going to be an invading colony here. We're going to be a Trojan horse invading colony here. And this government is going to be an invading Trojan horse. But these are our terms, master. Master, these are our terms, the British and the French said, right? They didn't really ever plan to become Americans like us. They planned to take over America and just suck what was good out of us and try to claim it for themselves. You know, Alice Walker wrote a short story once. I think it was called 1954. It was a year in the 50s. And American author Alice Walker of The Color Purple, you might know her from that. And she wrote a number of other books. she came after Toni Morrison, and she was actually, I think, a better writer than Toni Morrison, but Toni Morrison was totally exciting. And Toni Morrison got a lot of her inspiration for her most popular book from her work as an editor for Leon Forrest of Northwestern University. Leon Forrest, an author that's been swept under the rug because his work will make you work to find out the real history of America. His work is like a compendium, an index to the truth of America. And Leon Forrest's work was buried by men like Henry Louis Gates and women like Hazel Carby, and they made sure that the future would not see Leon Forrest. His work was the subject of my thesis at Yale. But let me get back to this story that Alice Walker wrote. She wrote this story, and it was allegorical. It didn't name names, but you knew who she was talking about. And it was pretty much a story about Elvis Presley. It was a story about a character like Elvis Presley going to the home of an American musician, an American singer and musician. And he's going and he's asking the woman, you know, what does it mean? How do I capture the soul that you put into this? How do I capture the spirit of your music? You know, I'm shaking my hips, you know, trying to look sexy. I'm playing my guitar, you know, trying to look authentic and sexy. And I'm singing in a certain tone of voice, in a certain accent. And I'm really doing my best to imitate you. But I can't capture the magic. Can you please tell me what the magic is so I can capture the magic? And that's what Alice Walker's story, 1954, was all about. I think that's the name of it. Okay? Well, that's what they did with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in the parts that related to humanity and not business negotiations. They were trying to say, we want to capture the spirit of America and put it in our society as we take over the world. And just like the character in Alice Walker's short story, you can't do that. You can imitate someone else, but you can't become someone else. So here we are at the other side of the United States of America corporation election and appointment of their CEO. Well, I guess the appointment is in January. And here we're all still pretending that we had a choice, that our individual votes made a difference, and some delegate couldn't just wipe it out, and some eternally existing procedure for stealing votes somehow got legislated and investigated out of existence, when we never even admitted the truth of what happened in 2020. And my mother and my half-brother, Llewellyn Latimer Green Tepetti, Chicago, Cook County Circuit Court judge, was elected because she knew how to play the game. She knew that her first step was to get the other guy totally off the ballot by using obscure rules about everybody on your voter registry has to be verified as a real person. And the aldermen of Chicago were in the habit of exchanging lists of registered voter signatures for election petitions. They were used to selling these with old addresses, old signatures, old copies copied over. So my mother knew from paying off the aldermen in Chicago that one way that she could guarantee she was the only candidate on the ballot would be to challenge the other people's petitions to run and identify all of the fake people that the aldermen had been saving year after year. So the first thing my brother did when he decided he wanted to become an Illinois state representative was the very same thing, because that was the procedure how you win. But you wouldn't know that was a procedure how you win if you did not pay off the alderman who would tell you this is how you do it, right? in addition to making sure that you challenge the ballots, which have always been fraudulently, challenge the petitions to run, which have always been always been fraudulently derived from the Chicago machine. They would call the Democratic Party political strategies the machine. So you might still have candidates that are able to linger, but they're pretty easy to get rid of because the aldermen start passing out money and gifts and tickets to shows, and they specifically tell their soldiers, be sure you get this person to know this person's name and to promise to vote. Okay, so they're buying votes, just like Elon Musk is saying, I'll give you $1 million if you register to vote. And if you're paying any attention to me at all, you probably are in support of me. So I'll give you money if you vote. Well, if your vote is for sale, for one, what kind of an American are you? What kind of a person are you? Are you a political prostitute if your vote is for sale? That you don't vote based on principles and based on the idea that this person will represent me? But even if you did, it wouldn't matter, because the Electoral College delegates, there are only a few of those to buy off, aren't they? And they're not elected by you, they're appointed. So they're just like an Arizona judiciary. The old boy system puts in who they want to put in, right? Because the justice courts in Arizona, you don't even have to have gone to college. You just have to be approved by the European nationalist racists trying to steal the water and the gold and the antiquities and even now the sand. They want the sand now for the silica and for the Gorilla Glass screens on your technology and for the materials to build Elon Musk robots. So we all know that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are brands. They're like a flag. They're not as important as the people that believe in them and work to make their vision come true. They are flags. They are avatars, right? But Kamala Harris, she spent her whole life creating a fiction of being an American, a Black American, right? And then Candace Owens does an expose and finds out that Kamala cannot relate to our experience. You could see she couldn't relate to our experience when she locked up so many of our men and ruined their lives forever with a brutal prosecution system that was racially bent. Do you know how free European men are in this country? How free they are to do whatever they want? Oh, they can go in a grocery store and put their dog in the food basket. No one will bother them. But let me go in a store with my dog in a carry basket and put the carry basket in the basket and the European manager will rush out and be all over me. And the Europeans shopping in the store will be, American in the store, look for something wrong, humiliate her, right? Because they have an endless number of foot soldiers willing to participate in the objectification, marginalization, politicization, and abuse of real Americans. And the real Americans are the brown and the Black. We've got the Spanish real Americans that people call Latinos and Hispanics, but those words are European words. They are not American words, because those words have a tether to Spain. They're tethered to Spain. Did you ever see Robert De Niro's movie, The Missionary? In The Missionary, Robert De Niro enters South America as a religious person, and he shows love and role models mercy as a part of his teaching of the people, and they begin to embrace them. And then his masters from Europe come over and say, you've made them docile. You have, what do they call it? The savages. Oh, you have tamed the savages. You have made the landowners not afraid of us and think we're merciful and loving and they're friends. You have made the landowners think that Christianity is what you believe in and that you are beautiful and willing to die for us, just like Jesus, right? Thank you so much, because now it'll be so much easier for us to take their heads, rape their women, so we can have a population of half-breeds here that we can refine along the way and make them more and more European, according to the rabbit-proof fence British strategy for miscegenation as a political invasion. So you'll find that a lot of the people in South America that you'll see on TV and that you'll see in the public sphere do not look anything like the people of South America. The people of South America are brown in South America, just like they're brown here. Now, on the East Coast, there were more Americans with African DNA because Africa is closer to the East Coast. And you could accidentally end up in South America from Africa if you had a boat and you just got on your boat and lived on your boat and just floated away. You would end up in South America. So getting to South America from Africa was easy. That's why you have places in South America like Bahia. And that's why if you go to Belize and Guatemala, the authentic people are brown. But just like they whitewashed the American Indians by showing half-breeds as Indians and then putting them in the Smithsonian and then saying, well, these are the Indians. But it's not true. In South America, the television, what Televista, I don't know what their television station is called, but the television station there, all of the propaganda, everything you see in the public space, just like here, looks European. Scheinbaum looks mostly European. And I know that Scheinbaum is not an American name. That's a Jew name. That's a European name, right? But we're supposed to believe that all the machismo men, the brown-skinned, swarthy men of South America, the strong, broad-shouldered, thick-necked, strong men of South America are somehow Europeans. You know? Miscegenation, race mixing of Europeans with other races, is a weapon. I remember when the Europeans entered my family. The Europeans entered my family in the very same generation on both sides. And one side of my family originated in the Carolinas, Polk County, Carolinas. And the other side of my family originated in Oklahoma, from the Oklahoma Indians and the Florida Indians and the the brown skinned people of Oklahoma and the Southwest, that area. I mean, people didn't just stay in one place. People migrated, people moved, people were nomadic, people were free, but they were all brown, okay? And then the Europeans come, and in my family, B.H. Deck, my grandfather, was a half-breed. And he couldn't get on the Cherokee rolls because the Europeans who were doing the racial categorizations, doing the censuses, doing the Dawes lists, doing things to make sure that they could keep track of where the American assets were so they know exactly who to steal from. They denied him documentation of his Cherokee blood because he was a half-breed. Now, Martin Edwards was European, and he is my great-great-grandfather. Now, I'm pretty sure that it's Martin Edwards Sr., a Civil War veteran, who is the great-great-grandfather who raped, I'm going to say raped, because if he had married my great-great-grandmother, Mary Deck, then the economic power that he stole would have passed on to her, and from her to Bose, and from Bose to Carl, from Carl to Severn, from Severn to Silver Rain. And I would have access to my land in the Carolinas. So I'm pretty sure he didn't marry or respectably treat Mary Deck. In fact, my grandfather, Mabry Carl Deck, said that when his father left Oklahoma for Florida, left North Carolina for Florida. For he left North Carolina for Oklahoma. He called his father a reprobate. And that's the word that they passed on to us, that Martin Edwards was a reprobate. But when I went to Asheville, North Carolina to do research on this in the 1990s, no, it was in the early 2000s. When I went to North Carolina, Asheville, to do research and see all the birth records for my great grandfathers and see how they put race on there and see how race changed. First it was mulatto, and then it was colored, and then it was Negro, depending on how far they had gone in their racist agenda to displace American landowners from their land and use racism as the barrier to keep them away. So Bose thought his European grandfathers were reprobates, and he actually had to flee North Carolina, and he was a half-blood, right? But once you have used the woman's reproductive power with a corrupted seed, I'm not saying that I'm descended from corrupted seeds. I'm just saying that Martin Edwards Sr. and Martin Edwards Jr., my great, great, and great, great, great grandfathers, did not mean my line, my bloodline of theirs, any good. When I went to North Carolina, I actually saw the tombstone for Martin Edwards Sr. He was a big guy at the Mill Spring Baptist Church because his tombstone is the one right outside the front door. When you go outside, the side door, when you go outside the side door to the parking lot, the church graveyard is right there. And the very first stone, engraved stone, okay? Engraved stone, is my great, 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 great grandfather, who I really think is my great, great, great grandfather, not my great, 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 great grandfather. Because I'm pretty sure that Martin Edwards Jr. was not the one that knocked up Mary Deck to create Bose Hamilton Deck, my great, great grandfather, who founded the town of Lima in Oklahoma, and was a civic leader, but he hated his father. Now, one reason I'm bringing this up is because when the Europeans started to define everybody by race, one of the things that they decided was that there was such a thing called a mulatto. Now, in South America, they have it defined out for many more generations than we do in America. In America, if an American marries a European, the child is a mulatto. If a mulatto marries a mulatto, the child is a quadroon. If a mulatto marries a European, the child is, and they're a mestiza. I don't know. They've made a science of race mixing so that they know they know how many generations it takes for European genetic, the signs of your genes to be strong enough to override the American gene, the black gene. So the white gene has to go through several mixings with pure white blood before they can erase the visible signs of blackness. And when it got to the point where the visible signs of blackness could be erased so easily, because East Coast Indians were already a mixed race. There were already light-skinned East Coast Indians and dark-skinned East Coast Indians, because that coastline many peoples had met that coastline over the years. Okay, so our races were already mixed, but most of the people were brown, were We're toasty, roasty, toasty brown. So I don't like having titled this this little conversation I'm having with you as darkness before the dawn, because darkness has been represented in European language as something negative, because they want the color of American skin to be the first thing to be infused into every moment of self-identification and identification of others. So they say the darkness, and they use darkness as a substitute for evil. But when I say the darkness before the dawn, I mean the great potential for wonderful things to happen before you begin to see the signs, because you can see there's enough light, grace of God, signs of God, acts of God for you to actually see. Now, I know I've been all over the place with this conversation, and if this were a dissertation, I would go through and fill in the blanks and do it upright, just like I did with my Yale thesis and the exams I did at my doctoral exams at UMass, and just like I did, I'd do it in a scholarly way. I wouldn't leave you hanging anywhere. But this is an oral presentation, and oral presentations are just by nature very different from being able to go back and edit what you have said and fill in the gaps and correct your mistakes. That's why oral history is generally less reliable than a record of it. Mulattoes, other races mixed with Europeans, can be the most dangerous enemies of the Europeans, because when you look enough like them to see how they really act, you know exactly what you're fighting against. You know exactly what it is. Now, I know some people want to say, don't wear that wig. You'd be beautiful with your own hair. I like this wig. This is my favorite style of wig, and I like this wig. And they say that this is European hair, but I've never seen a European with blonde hair this thick and long. Have you? Have you? You ever seen a European with this ombre roots and no? So I've never seen a European with hair like my wig. Now the color might be blonde, but it doesn't mean I'm trying to emulate Europeans. I just like golden auras around me, and it's not because I think it's superior. When I was 12 years old and I was dreaming that I was Barbie in my sports car, a Porsche convertible, you know, my hair was long and black, you know, but I don't have that either. And because of my complexion and the configuration of my face with deep set eyes, when I put on long black hair, I look like Morticia, but not in a good way. But you can see where I'm going, right? When people see me, they say, your complexion is the complexion of a lot of Europeans. And when you wear that hair, you look even more European. It's confusing for us. We feel confused, and that makes us angry, because you're not easily to categorize racially. But I'm very easy to categorize morally. Okay? Morally, I'm easy to categorize. I have loved God more than anything all my life. If there was such a thing as a convent for people like me, I would probably be in that convent. I would probably be the mother superior of a convent by now, if convents really were filled with people that love God and love people and want to show people the love of God through the acts of humans. Before, I used to lecture at Wesleyan and University of Massachusetts. And before I would participate in a seminar at Yale University, I usually would pray. I would say, God, please let me answer someone's question today. Because of all the times that I have been in a college classroom, in a university classroom, listening to the scholars and authors speak and gotten doors opening. They call it an epiphany when you get that missing piece that puts your whole puzzle together just in an instant. And I would get so many of those, and I would pray to God that I would be able to provide a piece of the answer that would relieve the pressure of somebody's suffering. And this was a prayer I made this before every class that I taught. I made this prayer before every Girl Scout troop meeting that I led, every ballet troupe, ballet company, volunteer thing, because I just spent a lot of my time in meditation and prayer. If I wasn't reading and studying, I was pretty much meditating and praying, because I'm not that good at socializing. Okay. Now Elon Musk says he has Asperger's, and I see myself in that light, that I have some form of what you would call autism. And I've always had an excellent relationship with my friends that have autistic children, because I can understand the things that they can't say that they see. So I've had a lot of time to develop myself as a prayer mama. And I just know that everything's going to turn out all right. I just know that it wouldn't have mattered if Kamala won. You weren't going to have a better life. No way. You were just going to wonder how come all your hopes were being dashed like you were with Obama. You thought that when, oh my God, a black man president, we got it made now, y'all. Right? But I didn't fall for it. You want to know why I didn't fall for it? Because I was in Chicago when Harold Washington was elected. And the self-esteem and personal power of all the black people and all the black Indians and all the Spanishes in Chicago, we just got so full of ourselves, because we felt like finally the door to economic prosperity, the door to the freedom to segregate is here. We finally have some power. But it turned out that Harold Washington didn't care. He didn't have the power we thought. And then they started telling us of how many, homosexuals were in the city hall. And don't get me wrong, I love homosexuals. I really do. In fact, Jay Nadine, he does comedy, he does skits, he does writing, he's brilliant. He's obviously a homosexual. He has a beard and a mustache, but he wears dresses and does his nails and walks around like a queen. So I think that makes him super authentic, because he's saying, I am a man and I'm feminine and beautiful and homosexual. And I like him, and I like homosexuals. But I don't believe that homosexuals have the future of humanity on their minds, because they don't have children. Okay. Before I had children, I didn't have the future of humanity on my mind. You're just not going to be thinking too much about what about my children if you ain't got none. It's when you have children that this special part of you is created and opens up and says, oh my God, I have the power to change somebody's life forever. I can do it right or I can do it wrong, and it is going to matter. You know how scary that is? You better be on your knees praying to God when you've got the lives of other human beings in your hands, like you do when you're a parent. I prayed every day for guidance with my children too. And I went to a child psychiatrist, behavioral therapist, not a drug pusher like the ones that came after. But I went to a Yale Child Study Center psychiatrist every week to double check my parenting as best as I could with the latest science. Double check my parenting, because I know that with what my mother had to go through and what was left over for us, sometimes life seemed really brutal. Sometimes life seemed totally brutal. And I understood the whole time. I didn't like it, but I understood the whole time. You know, people in college used to hate for me to have a conversation with my mother freshman year because it always ended in tears and screaming because I'd be trying to get her to give me some money and she'd be trying to say, I ain't got none, ain't never gonna get none if these children don't get the fuck out of here and let me become a lawyer and let me become a judge. Then I'll have money. Then I can answer. But it's all happening at the same time, right? And she graduated. She was born in 1933. So she graduated from college in the 1950s, Langston University in Langston, Oklahoma, where her mother went and her grandmother went too. Three generations went to went to Langston University in Oklahoma. And my mother knew that we could all sit down and cry about European nationalist racism robbing us of our oil land, robbing us of our wealth, robbing us of our dignity every day, forcing us to work like dogs for the least amount in pay, and to deal with the people every day who are not as good as we are in any way, but have been given the economic power to have their way and to dominate and humiliate us. I mean, mom had to go through that. Grandma had to go through that every day. They were in New York, so you know they were getting it. And then Chicago. So my mother, when I'm in college and I'm like saying, oh my God, I didn't know it's such a hard world out here. You got to help me, mama. And she's saying, I ain't got nothing, baby. But I'm not going to tell you I ain't got nothing. And I'm not going to act like I ain't got nothing. And I'm not going to represent like I ain't got nothing. I'm just going to tell you, you better do better, honey. If you spent all the money you made during the summer, then you're just not going to eat. Okay? You're just not going to eat. Because I'm married to a freaking psychopath that won't feed his own children or take care of his wife. And I'm trying to make a clear way for myself. I'm trying to get my own. Now, that was hard and brutal. But by freshman year, I got the message. And I took care of myself. And I never asked my mother for anything until I was graduating from college. But she wasn't nice about it. We didn't sit down in the grass and cry over our fate. My mother pretty much said, hey, I'm out here humping, baby. You got to get out there humping too. And she didn't mean like being a hooker or prostitute. She meant you just have to make your own way. You got to be like High John the Conqueror and make a way out of no way because my hands are full. I respect and love my mother. I'm glad that I was intelligent enough to understand her lessons to me. I'm glad that I didn't become an extra burden to her. I'm glad I became a source of pride for her because she could say, oh, my daughter? Oh, Silver Rain Runningcloud? Oh, she's at Yale, right? But my mother also knew that they would try to destroy me. One of the ways that my family saved the children was we didn't talk about racism much at home until we were much older. Even when my mother became a master's degree at the University of Saskatchewan in sociology, she didn't talk a lot about racism. Because in my family, my grandmother, Fanny Gaines, and my mother, Lynn Green, they believe that if you tell the children your tale of woe, you will decrease their belief in themselves and their ability to make their own way. If you're looking ahead and you see a path that's clear, you're more likely to start on that path. And if you look back and you see a path that's clear too, I mean, you see it's filled with tears, it's a trail of tears, but you don't see the dead bodies or the weapons or the lost fingers. You don't see the hysterectomies on the ground. You don't see all that. You see something that looks sad but clear. Well, that's how they wanted it to be. They didn't want us to look back at our line of ancestors and see the blood, because They knew that if we see the blood behind us, we're going to see blood in our path. And they wanted us to have our best fresh start, the best fresh start as possible. Well, I'm a broadcaster. I'm a blabbermouth. I'm someone that can't keep up a secret. It's just the way I am. So I was not able to raise my children like that. I raised my daughter telling her, don't ever be in a room with a man by yourself or you'll get raped. She's probably this big, and I'm telling her, don't. I say, boys are not like girls. Boys are thinking about sex a lot. And if you are alone with the boy, he might try to rape you. My daughter waited so long to lose her virginity. She was out of college. I shouldn't say that. I don't really know for sure, but because she didn't want to get raped. She was so afraid of being raped because as a girl growing up by myself, putting myself through college, making my own way, I wasn't smart. I didn't have a father. They wiped my father out of the race. And my brother was a homosexual. So he wasn't, going to tell me how boys that like girls are going to act when they're alone with the girls. I had to find out the hard way, pun intended. And I never wanted my daughter to go through that because it was not, you know how stupid you feel when you're raped again? You're like, didn't I learn my lesson? But you learn your lesson for that situation, but you didn't learn your lesson for this situation. So rather than learn each lesson differently, let me tell you the golden rule. Don't even let them in your room. Don't let them in your room. Don't go into their room. Don't be alone with them. That way you've covered all the bases, unless you're in a situation where it's a bunch of boys trying to group rape you, which I also had to deal with, an attempted group rape. Now, that man actually moved up through the Chicago legal community and became an appellate court judge. And the way that he broke up with girls was by taking them to a stag party, getting them drunk, leaving them with a lot of aggressive teenage boys. When I looked around the room, and I don't get drunk very easily, when I looked around the room and I saw that Nate had left me in a room with all these criminal looking boys in a house where I'd never been before, down the street from his mama's house, I screamed. I screamed bloody murder. And he came running back, and I got driven home that night. And on the way home, when he was driving me home, he was trying to make me think that that his plans were to propose to me. He started like fingering my wedding band fingers if he was checking me for size. But what he did instead was he never called me again. He never called, and we've been dating for a whole year. But he was about to graduate from law school, so he was dumping me. But he got rewarded. The system rewarded him. They made him an appellate court judge in Cook County, Chicago. And I said to him, Nate, my brother Andre is trying to rob my trust fund that my mother left me. Do you think Nate raised a little finger to help me get my inheritance, to help me get my $1 million trust fund? Nate didn't raise a finger because he's on the inside. He's the boule. When the boule first started, it was mostly mulattoes, right? Because the Europeans realized that if you don't incorporate the mulattoes and give them a piece of the pie and a place in the hierarchy, they're going to be your worst enemies, okay? They're going to be your worst enemies because they're going to know you better than anybody. They're going to know what you're really up to. Let me explain what I mean a little better. Because of my complexion and my choice of wig, sometimes it takes Europeans a moment to really look me in the face and see that I'm an American and not a European, okay? And sometimes they'll even cough to sort of announce it to the room and say, I see one, I see one. They have a cough signal. They even teach their babies the cough signal. I was in a restaurant in Scottsdale once, and I'm walking, and a family rushes by me as if they're afraid, and they're coughing, and the little baby is in their arms, and their children are there. And I'm like, oh, wow, they give that cough sign. They teach their kids from childhood that when we see a real American, when we see the race we're robbing and killing, we're going to give a little sign. I was at Denny's today, my favorite Denny's over in Cathedral City. I was over there today after church, and I walked to the bathroom, and one of the European women coughed. She never coughed before, she never coughed after, but when I walk by, I get the signal to cough. Okay? Now, if you're dark skinned, they probably don't do the cough because you're obviously dark skinned. You're obvious there. But here's the other thing: when you're light, when you're a mixed race, and it's representing in you, right? Because you can have a family that's multicolor when you mix dark skinned people with light skinned people. Pure European, when pure Europeans mix with the people they're robbing and murdering, you can get the first generation, second, you can get every generation having children in a rainbow of colors. So I happen to come out light. Even though my mother, who is closer genetically to the European infiltration of my family, she's browner than me, right? But she's more European in her DNA than I am. I am less European than she is, and I'm more Indian than she is. But but all that, who cares, right? That's European preoccupation. But when you can sneak up on them and see their faces change, that's when you know. That's when you know how deeply ingrained racism is, because they will have their normal, friendly, high neighbor face on until you get close enough for them to see that you ain't one of them. And then everything changes. Now that hurts in a very personal way. Here I am, a person that loves everyone, a person that faces humanity with concern beyond race. And I have to see somebody look normal and then see them completely change their face to the face of a demonic racist that's going to shut me out, that's not going to talk to me, that's going to talk to me about stereotypes to try to insult and marginalize me. So I think that a mixed race person can be the most dangerous enemy for an invader to face, because the mixed race person knows that they are not the invading race, and they know they don't want to be the invading race, but they know more about how the invading race operates. And I'm pretty sure that's why they had to create the boule, because the boule used to be light skinned, but then over the years after affirmative action, it really changed because so many of the light skinned people became radicalized, and a lot of the light skinned people became discriminated against by the brown skinned people in their family, right? Because they're seeing you as the house slave that's always getting something better and helping the evil invaders to oppress, right? And that's what they're thinking, and they taught that, and they communicated it that, and that created schisms, color schisms in the race. But it would have already been there. It would have already been there when my father grew up in Oklahoma. He was born and raised in Oklahoma. His father had come from Polk County, North Carolina. His mother had come from one of the more northern counties, and they were Indians. They looked like Indians, and they looked like Europeans because they were mixed with Europeans. But they were tall, lanky, high cheekbones, big, strong bodies, not Europeans bodies at all. And Mary Deck's grandchildren would be my grandfather. And they moved to Oklahoma, and my father was born, right? And my father was born when my grandfather was 16 years old. And he was on his way to college, Lincoln University, a historically black college and university. And he was on his way to Lincoln. So he couldn't stop and be a farmer father of the baby. So my father was raised by the chief of the tribe, Harriet Davis, the chief of the freedmen tribes of Oklahoma. Now, the Europeans have tried to erase the records of the freedmen tribe land titles, because Harriet Davis got 60 acres and a mule, 60 acres of her own land, okay? 60 acres of her own, it was their land. They've been there for centuries. But because my father was the son of a of a mulatto, of an Indian European hybrid, he was called a half breed. When I meet up with my cousins there who are younger than me, who grew up, with the stories about my daddy, they say he was a half breed. That's what they called him. So I won't say that the Indians don't discriminate too, right? That a half breed is a half breed. And it might not have mattered to be a half breed if the full breeds weren't murdering you. You see? One of the things that I have to deal with is that just like when I go into a place and I see a lot of Europeans there, I don't even try. I don't even try because I know that they're just going to hurt me and reject me and abuse me and act like racists. So I don't even try. I just shut down. And I know that a lot of Black people that see me don't see me the way I see myself. They don't see me as a fellow Black person. They see my skin color and they feel hostile. My college roommate actually told me, she said, my whole family doesn't like light skinned people, right? Because we're freshmen in college. So we're all into, well, who are you for real, right? Who are you for real? I mean, you have that moment when you're a teenager where you actually want to peek behind the veil and say, who are you for real, though? Who are you for real, though? And when you see enough people for real, though, you're just like, don't let me know. Show me your agent. Show me your social self, because I don't want to hear how much you hate me when you don't even know me. I don't want to hear the stories your family told you about people that represent physically like me, right? But my mom was brown skinned. My aunt was brown skinned. My brother was brown skinned compared to me. My sister was very brown skinned. Her children, she's got children that are they're black. They're black skinned. One of her children, her son's black skinned. And that's my nephew, okay? And she's my half sister. So my father's genes are the half-breed Indian European genes, and her father's genes are not. They're probably full American Indian genes, judging from her color and beautiful wavy hair she's got. She's probably a full breed Indian father. But for me, the Europeans got in. And interestingly, the Europeans got into my family at the same point in time, almost as if it was the time in their invasion agenda to make miscegenation the way into land control, land ownership, and destruction of family and denigration of the reputation of the women, and leaving the women alone with the burden of those bastard children. Right? Because we know Martin Edwards didn't marry Mary Dick. And we know from the census reports that they live right next door to each other, the father, the son, and Mary. And we know that Bose was a mixed race, a half breed. And we know that Mary lost her land. Bose did not inherit Mary's land. Martin Edwards did, took it over, right? Because when you have a half-breed son and all your European friends are kicking the shit out of him, and you're kicking the shit out of him, and your culture is saying, yeah, kick the shit out of that half-breed son, and your son has to flee and leave, okay, with enough economic security to do something. That's the good part, is that the good part is that their Europeans did give them something to start a new stake in the Oklahoma with. They didn't come there with nothing. They came there with something. They came there with the ability to buy and own property, real property, the land and the minerals in the land. So with Bose not liking his father, now to me reparations means that Whatever Mary Deck left, we recover, and it comes to me and my heirs and my children. Whatever Martin Edwards left, I get my share of that instead of just the European children. But look at what a cool strategy that is. You come to a country, you live next door to the beautiful women, you rape them and get them pregnant with your children. You abuse those children so they run away and don't claim their inheritance. And then you make sure the woman is powerless and in disgrace in her community so that her neighbors will not say, we're not going to let them steal your land, Mary. We're going to keep your legacy alive, Mary. And that doesn't happen. And then the Europeans can own more and more and more until somehow they own 90% of the land and are the only ones with land development rights. The only ones with land development rights. And then on the other side, out of Texas, comes Maydee Harris, Maydee Harrison. And I'm pretty sure Maydee was Mexican, okay? Because I have cousins that have long, dark, straight hair and brown skin and generous, wide hips, beautiful big butts, right? And they look like Mexicans. And I didn't even know it till I came out west, Arizona, California, and I keep seeing these women who have figures like my cousin Fanny had. And I remember when Fanny hit puberty and her hips started to spread, my cousin William, who was always mean and mischievous, he would tease her about her growing hips and make her feel embarrassed about it. And he would say, you won't be a Twiggy if you eat like a piggy. You won't be a Twiggy if you eat like a piggy. You won't be, giving everybody an eating disorder. Say, because my cousin's hips. My cousin had such beautiful hips that men driving cars in Washington, D.C. would honk their horns at her and almost drive into light poles because they're so busy looking at her beautiful bottom walking down the street. Okay, she had a big, beautiful Mexican bottom. But they didn't highlight the Mexican side of our bloodline because the Mexicans were being slaughtered by the Europeans as a part of the Louisiana Purchase War, as a part of the Spanish-American War. I mean, was that 1812 or 1912? Was it 19? I don't know when. I think it was 8. I don't know when it was. I'm not good at history. I'm not good at remembering numbers. I'm just trying to say to you that the Europeans infiltrated my family at the same point in time, as if it was a part of a strategic war plan, that this generation we're going to do this to, this generation we're going to do that to, this generation we're going to do that to, this generation we're going to do that to, and by this generation there'll be genocide and we can just take this stuff. So let's just keep track. Let's keep track of the records and follow our plan. So in Oklahoma, when this infiltration took place in the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was by German Jews, a German Jew family, Heinrich Müller and his wife Fanny Müller, the Müllers. And the Müllers had my great grandfather, Walter Henry Müller. Okay? Now, Müller wife, my great grandmother, Fanny Müller, she dies, right? And she had 2 children. No, she dies. She dies. And she has a daughter named Fanny, who to me looked mixed race. She looked very not 100% European. And their son, Walter Henry, who looked extremely European, even had, one of those thin little mustaches and totally straight hair and a small little German body. And Walter Müller, remarried. So he has Fanny and Walter Henry, and he remarries a European woman. And she doesn't want these children around any place. It's just like the story of Hansel and Gretel, or Sleeping Beauty, or other fairy tales where the wicked stepmother tries to kill the children or send them away. So Walter Henry Müller and his sister Fanny Müller are taken in by the local Americans, brown skin, wavy hair. They're taken in by the Mullers. And the Muller children are taken in. The Jew Muller children are taken in by the American Gaines family. Gaines family. So Walter Henry hated his father so much for betraying and abandoning them that he took the name of the family that adopted him and he dropped his father's name. And we were no longer Mullers forever and ever and ever. And when my grandmother was born, she wasn't born Fannie Mae Muller. She was born Fannie Mae Gaines. And we became the Gaineses. We became Americans, the Gaineses. Well, he married a woman named Maydee Harrison, and she was from Texas. And she was much younger than he was, which was the trend of the day. You'll still see that happening here. And they together had 7 more children. He had been married before he married my great grandmother, Maydee Gaines. But I don't know, maybe his wife died too. And he had 2 daughters, Stella and somebody else. And so it was a blended family. You had the half brothers and sisters and the full brothers and sisters. But my grandmother, Fannie Mae Gaines, was born to that family. And if my mother was born in 1934, my grandmother must have been born, 1912, 1913, somewhere like that. And her father was probably born in 1890, 1892, something like that. So this is at the change of the century. The Europeans' plan was to mix race with us. Now in Texas, then, if Maydee Harrison lived in Texas and Walter lived in Texas, then I have inherited land in Texas. I have a genetic root of land ownership in Texas that would have to be addressed by any effective reparations program, right? But we all know that it's probably never going to happen, right? It's never going to happen. But I bet that Elon Musk will be able to buy big plots of land. Oh, he already has. And he's not even an American. So I can't get my land in America, but Elon Musk can buy up my land and the land of all my relatives and friends and create a huge old gigafactory where he extracts from underground using his boring machines. He creates an entire underground processing and mining operation that we can't even see. And with all of the private railroads going in and out of these European enclaves, we won't even be able to monitor how many materials from my land in Texas he uses to create space machines for further invasion of our privacy and further social and economic control. So my great-grandfather, Walter Muller Gaines, owned land in Oklahoma, and his wife, Maydee Gaines, created a lawsuit that's still a landmark lawsuit about who owns the mineral rights for the land. Because when the Europeans started to do the beginning of the oil and gas industry, they started telling all the landowners, well, you only own the topsoil. You don't own the minerals. We can get the minerals. And because we're a corporation and more important and powerful than an individual, that is, we will come and kill you, and our law enforcement will kill you, and your children will never get grown. We have the right to build wells on your land if we want to. We have the right to do anything we want. Okay? And that's what they did. That's what they did. So my grandmother most likely has land in Texas. And my grandfather, Walter Muller Gaines, who left his father, who put him out to be foster child, and left his father and felt great contempt for his father. So my mother's grandparents were European mulattoes or Europeans who were culturally mulatto. And my father's great grandparents were mulattoes. And both of those men despised their European family, despised those European men. that made the women pregnant, those European men. I just think that's interesting that that convergence would happen at the same place in the same time. And it makes me want to look for further kind of convergences. And I wouldn't believe it was a part of a war strategy if I'd never seen Rabbit Proof Fence. Rabbit Proof Fence is a movie that completely changed my conception of any innocence in the invasion of America by the Europeans. Any innocence I thought they possessed, I knew, oh, wow, they've even planned out how long it will take to go from a mixed race looking Australian, like a real Australian, to a mixed race with Australian features hidden. When enough mulattoes were produced through rape and seduction, to me, if you seduce a woman and don't marry her, and she's a good, decent girl from a good, decent Christian family, as all of my relatives were, then you've essentially raped her because you've left her pregnant and alone. Okay. So maybe she let you do it, maybe you made her want it, but the net result is I'm stuck with this baby by myself and I ain't got no man. I don't have a husband. I don't have social respect and dignity. That's a form of rape. So these men that raped my great grandmothers, well, they left land that belongs to me. And I want that land. I want that land. But when I was in Oklahoma, I saw the land. By the second time I went to look at the records, the land managers, all the Europeans, speculators, they were following me. And in a title office where there was nobody, when I go the second time, there are four other people roaming around trying to look busy. And because they had already put the forgeries in the books were so old. And it was before typewriters. So the records were handwritten in ink. And I could tell by the freshness of the pages and by some other kind of perfection that was there that the pages I was looking at the second time weren't anything like the pages that I was looking at the first time. And when I would go back to try to find the records of land from my family being moved from person to person, I couldn't find them anymore. I spent hours there and then I had to go, but I couldn't find the records. But you want to know what I did find? I found that some European named Joanne Deck, who's not even in my family, a European in New York, somehow got a typed and formal title document giving her claim to my Oklahoma land. And when I tried to get it, why, the lawyer wouldn't even let me in his office. He talked to me on the side of the street outside till I said, wow, you're not even going to let me in the office? And then he did, but he wasn't that interested because he knew that they were into stealing. He knew there's nothing I can do. I can't get you the title to your land. And then when I try to go in to stop the Department of Transportation from seizing a second slice through the middle of my land, Judge Butner sets me up for a sabotage that would have gone down a great deal the way the sabotage went with the Arizona State Troopers. And they'd already murdered my cousin Alex Jackson, and his wife, Star. They'd already murdered them on the highway. They were decapitated on the highway on their way from Oklahoma, on their way from Los Angeles to Oklahoma. They were driving. And somehow somebody knew I was related and gave me a call because they had already done the studies of everybody who was in the family. They were already watching and sabotaging and murdering and seducing and setting up everybody in my family. So there'd be nobody left. Nobody left to claim the inheritance. And then when you know nobody's left, you just move in and take it. Well, somehow Joanne Deck got written into the record. And my family got forged out. Now, how do you deal with that? You think Trump is going to address that? You think Kamala is going to address that? But more importantly, do you think my story is unique or special? Or do you think that it was a strategy, just like somehow the Europeans in Oklahoma invade and infiltrate my family at the exact same moment in time as the Europeans in the Carolinas rape my women and have bastard children? Isn't that interesting? And it's perfectly in line with Rabbit Proof Fence. Another movie you should see if you want to see how the Europeans work and how much deliberate planning is behind their invasions is The King's Men. The King's Men. And I talked about that before. Well, I woke up this morning feeling more miserable than sin. And I'm not even lying. When I woke up this morning, I was so sad. I felt like, oh my God, something completely horrible is going to happen today. It's not over. My pain and suffering is not over. Something horrible is going to happen today. I just know it. I just know it. I just know it. And I didn't even want to get up. I didn't even want to go to church. I wanted to stay laying right there in that bed. I just wanted to stay laying in that bed and just try to find a way to have faith. Try to find a way to survive. Try to find a way to believe that it doesn't matter who's president, because America is back in God's hands. Okay? Whoever's the president, it's not going to matter because everything's going to be fine. And I'm trying to get to that place of faith and that place of believing. And I'm saying, okay, I'm just going to do the right thing. I'm just going to go to church. And I sent a text message to my family that's been supporting me so much. And I said, oh, I have so much anxiety today. I feel afraid. I feel like maybe the police are going to kidnap me today and throw me in jail again. And I'll never get out. I don't know. I went to the hospital and now it looks like the bioweapons are opening up in me again. Did the hospital infect me all over again? And am I going to have to go through the same thing all over again? Oh God, oh God, oh God. That's how I felt this morning. That's how I felt this morning. That's how I felt this morning. But I said, I'm going to church anyway. I'm going to face church anyway. Because my congregation has holy people in it. That's one thing that you know. Is that the Black church, the American church, has been so devastated that when you do get there, it's the holy soldiers. We're the holy soldiers. We're the ones that will get up and go to church and sing in the church and preach in the church and pray in the church and listen in the church and be the congregation, because we are the holy ones. And we believe in God through all the pain, through all the disappointment, through all the abuse, through all the genocide. We don't stop believing in God. And if you go to church, you will find the staunch and the determined ones. You will find God's children, because everybody else left. Everybody else is spending their Saturday night getting drunk and going to the club. Everybody else is giving up on God. So I knew that in my church, the First African Methodist Episcopal Church of Indio fame, I knew in my church I was going to find at least some encouragement that I needed. So I went on to church, and oh my God, it turns out that everybody was feeling that way. And so our preacher she just opened the roof of the church and the angels came flying in. She brought the Spirit of God to us today, and we all needed it, and we were all just rejoicing. Everybody could feel it. Everybody could feel it. I mean, she didn't even follow the program because she said, oh, the Spirit is here, and we could all feel it. So I woke up today feeling like despair. But God heard me. God didn't just hear the pain in me. God heard the pain in them. And we all came together to let God know, God, we love you. We give our lives to you. And I called one of my friends called before I left. And I said, oh, I'm going to church, dressed for church now. And he said, oh, go praise the Lord. Go praise God. Go give God his praise. Now, I tell you, this friend of mine looks a lot like a Toltec. And he is very spiritually different from anyone else I've ever known. And that made me feel good and strong, right? Then I got my friends saying, yes, Silver Rain, Runningcloud, go to church and love God. Let God know that you love God. Let God know that you worship him, that you believe that no matter what happens with the European political system, y'all are going to be all right. We are going to be all right. Made me feel really good. It made me forget all of my nightmares of the destruction of the earth. It made me feel like with God we are able to change things. If we are able to love each other and to actually have a dream of what is right and make it happen, that maybe one of my sisters in the church will be able to find a handsome and loving and kind husband to be father to her children. Maybe she will be able to raise her children when she has them in a beautiful, comfortable house. Maybe the Europeans' deprivation acts to deprive us of everything, down to the will to live, through economic control of our systems and through creating hostile social environments. Maybe God can stop them. Maybe God can change their hearts instead of destroying them. Thank you for joining me. You know my name is Silver Rain. Thank you for joining me. I've been not feeling well this week, and I'm going to take a rest. Look how red I am. Oh, I don't look my cutest. Is that better? Is that better? All right. Silver Rain, Runningcloud. Over and out.